professional.
Maybe.
All right.
But I'm thinking about getting something better.
We are live.
Okay.
Whoa!
Welcome everybody. You're on the screen. So serious mode now. First of all, this is episode 2 of the State of Legacy. I want to thank everybody that had something to say about the first episode. We got a lot of nice responses, kind words from you guys, and yeah, I really appreciate that. Also some less kind words, but yeah, I mean that's the internet for you. So what can you do? So yeah. First of all, I want to respond to some people that commented on the first episode. The volume, there were some problems with that. Hopefully that's fixed now. So if you guys in the chat can let me know if there's any problems, just say something, and I'll try to get it sorted. Let's see. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. There was a Legacy Mocs last weekend, and yeah, we all played in it.
I think our
We are frozen.
our
on
images
webcam.
are frozen.
Oh, okay. Why are they frozen?
Oh, we actually had a
Okay.
contest. Who would move first, and what person loses?
Yeah. Okay. I had Skype minimized. That seemed to be the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So yeah, we played in the Mocs. Didn't do so well, but let's go over our decks anyway. Just to tell you guys what decks we failed with and why we failed. Mark, if you want to start, I'll bring your deck list up on the screen here. You played Death in Texas. How did that go?
I played Death in Texas, and in the beginning I faced the deck I wanted to face in Miracles, but then I failed to do well against the rest of the field. I expected and tuned my deck for Burn and Miracles mainly, and was trying to dodge Elves, and I ran into Miracles in the first round and 2-0'd that. But then I ran into some decks that I was less prepared for and got crushed, basically.
Alright, yeah, we can see your matchups there on the screen as well. Like Show and Tell, Dredge as well. Like that's kind of we haven't seen much Dredge lately online, so I mean you have Rest in Pieces, but other than that, it's got to be a pretty tough matchup, right?
Well, it's actually, I think that Death in Texas is one of the few decks that can win game 1 against Dredge, but if they just have a solid draw or a very good draw, then it's pretty much impossible to win. And post-sideboard, you of course need your hate to do well, and even then you can get wrecked on the early turns. What happened against Dredge was I split. I went 1-2 against Dredge, and the first game went as it usually goes against Dredge. You get crushed, and the third game I got killed on turn 1. So there was not a lot I could do. Just a Dredge pair with some solid draws, and that's hard to stop sometimes.
Turn 1 kill, that's pretty unusual. I mean, you gotta have a pretty sick hand for that one.
Absolutely. It was breakthrough, Lion's Eye, and then Fatal Shooting.
Yeah, okay. That's probably going to do it. Yeah. So a little bit unfortunate there with your matchups. I mean, if you just play against Miracles like all the time or something, that might have helped.
Yeah, definitely. I was very prepared for that. And Burn too. I just had one sideboard card in Circle of Protection Red, but I had 2 Enlightened Tutors to find them. And the rest of my deck is pretty solid against Burn already, so I'm very, very prepared for that matchup.
Alright, well let's move on to you, Julian. You also play in the Mocs. You streamed it as well. We might have some of your viewers in the chat right now.
Yeah.
So here's your deck list on the screen. You played your signature Elves deck, and how did that go?
Well, I started out pretty well for me. In the first round, I was playing against Burn, as I expected, to be quite heavily present at the Mocs. I got there, I went first, I believe, and these days, Elves versus Burn is like pretty much 50-50. It used to be much better, but Eidolon really takes a toll on your win rate. So, I mean, the matchup is pretty straightforward. You just have to be super technically correct, and yeah. In the next round, I was playing against Food Chain, and
of course,
yeah, of course. I mean, it's the Mocs, right? Why wouldn't you play Food Chain?
Yeah, of course, why not?
Yeah, I won 2-0, And I had the pleasure of testing against Caleb Durward like some weeks ago. We played it, I think, 10, no, maybe not exactly 10 matches. And so I felt really, really prepared for the matchup. And like any back deck, Rens Run Packmaster totally crushed it. Like you have your replicates and you control the food chain, and then just the Packmaster runs away with the game. But yeah, not much to say there. Then I faced Burn again, and that's where it went all downhill for me because got somewhat unlucky. Maybe I didn't play very well, but I mean, yeah. Sometimes you just lose to Burn. So for the next 2 rounds, I'm playing against Blue White Red Diver, which is a really bad, maybe not a really bad matchup, but a bad matchup. I've recently grown more positive about it because I'm playing 4 replicates and all that stuff, but didn't really work out. I think I made one mistake, and then you just lose. After that, I played against Bagdelva, and Bagdelva is a rather favorable matchup for Elves, so I won there. But having 3 losses, I was already out of contention for the top 8, so I was just playing for top, I don't even remember, 32 or 64 to get the promo and some packs.
Yeah.
And in the last round, I was playing against Burn again, and I won again. I mean, Burn doesn't really give you a lot of avenues to show your skill, if you even have some skill. I mean, I'm not saying that I do, but I do have some skills. But winning against Burn...
You don't have many decisions, you mean? You just,
you
just play your cards and hope that it's fast enough, I guess.
Yeah, there are some decisions, but it's really not as long-term oriented as all the other matchups. So, yeah.
So is there anything you can do like to really improve your Burn matchup with Elves? Is there a card you can play that...
The first step would probably be to wanting to improve your Burn matchup, because I was well aware that Burn would be played quite a lot in the Mocs, but there wasn't really anything that stood out to me as that's the card I want, because overall the matchup is still 50-50 and people don't play very well. Like, they don't know that they actually have to kill your Elves if they are new to the deck instead of just aiming everything at the face. So I felt pretty confident in playing my chances and getting there, even though there isn't really that much that you can do. There's also no real great sideboard option. Like, I know that some people play Leyline of the Void, but of Sanctity, but that's not an option for Elves because you really want at least 3 or 4 of those. And all the other options are somewhat slow. I know somebody on Twitter mentioned Wellwisher, but
Wellwisher, wow, that's probably never untapping. So I mean,
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Leyline of Sanctity. Yeah, I mean, who would play that card, right? But have you considered playing Imperial Archangel to to natural order it out and then maybe that helps?
Once or twice in my mind, but the thing is, once you actually get to natural order, you either kill them or
they're dead next turn.
But you can get Uric Thar. So if you want to dedicate a sideboard slot, you'd rather have Uric Thar because that's also good against combo.
For sure.
Yeah. That would be the slot. So if you want to improve it, you add Uric Thar because he's overall okay, and yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think the second place Elves deck in the Mocs played Uric Thar main deck even. So I guess that's something. Oh yeah, Elder Skillworm. That's.
Oh yeah, I mean Elder Skillworm. I've played against that, and it really made me kill him with the Deathlight Shamans. Like the other player had Elder Skillworm, but overall. I have to admit, I have never dedicated as much thought to Elder Skillworm as somebody, maybe somebody else, but I'd rather have something else in the sideboard, because that's an entire sideboard slot. And that's the valuable space you have in Elves, your sideboard slots. Yeah,
okay. I guess your start point is my Burn matchup is already reasonable, and if I just play better than my opponent, I might be able to, get a decent win percentage.
Yeah, if both players play perfectly, and that's not that hard, it's pretty 50-50, maybe slightly favored for Elves. Yeah. And there are other issues I want to address in the sideboard.
Alright, well let's move on to my own Mocs performance then. I streamed it as well with the delay, just like you did. Played my top to Foundry deck. Sad to report that my 25 win streak came to a stop in this event, and I was burned out in round 4. unfortunate. I started off playing against a standard deck, actually, Jund Planeswalkers. So it was actually really scary, because he had all these Planeswalkers against my Miracle deck, and at some point he had like a Garruk Apex Predator on top of his deck. I was like, whoa, can I even beat that card? But luckily, Jason Mind Sculptor, Fate Seal, kind of makes most of your problems go away, so I managed to narrowly defeat that deck. Yeah, I started out really well, 3-0, I felt very confident. But then against Burn in the third game, I'm mulling it to 4, I had like Leyline, Land, Spell Pierce or something. It was actually a pretty good hand. But he just had like 3 creatures and I couldn't get removal in time, so it's kind of where my hold streak ended. And it only went downhill after that. So yeah, I went to 4-3 in the end. Kind of, yeah, it's enough for a foil show and tell, so can't complain too much. Alright, so let's talk about what actually did well in the event, because we all didn't do very well. So here is the top 16 metagame. We had an Elf Mirror in the finals, actually. What is the Elf Mirror like, Julian? I assume you've played it before.
Well, I think the most important factor is the die roll. That's pretty much it, especially in the first game. In the first game, there are so little avenues of interaction. Like, yeah, you can try denying your opponent's Deathrite Shamans, and like knowing when to do that and when not to do that, and when just to gamble. But other than that, after sideboarding, you get discard, and you could even make an argument for not sideboarding and discard on the play, because you just want to be faster. On the draw, you definitely want it. And I mean, I always say there's one decision that's to natural order for non-lethal, just to have the Crater of Behemoth as an additional blocker that you can untap during their turn, and that has actually won me several games. But I have played way more than several games, so it comes up in like 5% of the matches. Other than that, it's super straightforward, and you side out all the long-term stuff like Wrench on Packmaster, Scavenging Ooze, and yada yada. So it's pretty tempo dependent, so if you go first, you're in good shape.
Right, so you're basically both just goldfishing and hopefully going crazy with Leon's nature, I imagine.
Yeah.
Alright. So yeah, here we have the winner of the Mocs was, is it Lanto or Lanto? I don't know how to pronounce that, but congratulations to him. Very impressive victory. And he actually played pretty much your list from what I can see. You mentioned you had one card difference with this list?
Yeah, in the main deck, I used to run a single Llanowar Elves, or I think he's got the Elfish Mystic. I mean, that's pretty much the same. Right now I'm trying out 2 Virtual Rangers, and I cut the Llanowar Elf, and that's the only difference. In the sideboard, I had 4 Thoughtseize, he's got 2 Thoughtseize and a Cabal Therapy, and he mentioned to me that he really wanted the Progenitors, so I think he is subtracted an... yeah, no. He changed that replicas from 4 to 3.
Right, okay. So Mark, do you want to comment on Elvish Mystic versus Llanowar Elves versus Fyndhorn Elves? Do you have an opinion on that?
No strong opinion there.
No strong opinion?
Fyndhorn Elves, probably.
Fyndhorn Elves? Alright. What do you think, Julian?
That doesn't come in foil. And if you want to follow... I mean, yeah, there's an ugly foil because it's new frame, so I'm all for old frame, promo, Llanowar Elves because it's old frame and they all foil style, so there's no real option. You have to go with Llanowar Elves.
Right, yeah, I would go with a white bordered 7th edition Llanowar Elves just to tilt my opponent, but that's yeah. Anyway, so the card that stands out the most to me here is the Packmaster, actually. Obviously you have introduced that technology. So when is playing a Packmaster better than just casting a natural order? That is kind of what I'm wondering.
I think the sound quality wasn't very good. I think you asked about the Packmaster when it's better than natural order.
Yeah, in what situation would you rather play a Packmaster than a natural order?
In pretty much any game that you expect to go long. Like, natural order is a pretty big commitment, even though it doesn't look like because you're just sacking a random elf. You don't have to do that. Against any deck that actually aims for the long game and doesn't have a "oh, oops, I kill you" button. Like yeah, there are several decks that do that, but like all of the bug decks, you can natural order, and if it resolves, it's good. But if it doesn't resolve, I don't really like it. But the Packmaster is just so great. He dodges Abrupt Decay, he dodges against the other decks, he dodges Lightning Bolt, and he just completely dominates the ground. There's no real card in Legacy on the ground that actually fights the Packmaster, because the Packmaster just reigns supreme. Or let's say his wolves. It also gives you like a mana sink option. Sometimes you have a lot of mana, but you can't really do things with it, and you're hoping to top deck. And the Packmaster he loves eating up all your mana. He's
Fair
also
enough.
yeah. The other thing about him is he bridges the gap. I think I've mentioned that to some people already. He bridges the gap between the Senate for 2 that gets the Visionary if you're looking for gas, and the Senate for 8 that's lethal. Sometimes you're in between, you're in this mid-rangey kind of situation, and you don't really want to get the Visionary because maybe you don't have the Symbiote, or for some reason that's not really a viable way to go. So you get the Packmaster, and the game, like at least the ground is yours.
Alright, that makes a lot of sense. Like 2/2 Death Touch is for 3 mana. Like that's gonna grind out pretty much everything.
2/2 Death Touch.
Yeah, 2/2 Death Touches. Mark, have you played against Packmaster in Legacy before?
I played against it once, and I was playing Dozen Texas, and obviously I got crushed because the Elves matchup is terrible. And
Obviously.
the Packmaster just sealed the deal. It
Right.
was a game I was looking to lose, and then the Packmaster sealed the deal.
Right,
Yeah,
because
Dozen Texas
first you have to stop the Elves deck from going broken, and then you still have to win the grinding game as well, and then have to have the
Yeah.
Packmaster. It's gonna be
I'm
pretty
actually
tough.
more afraid of Death on Texas grinding me out than most other creature-based decks, because they have a lot of flyers, and the flyers are the big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if there's an equipment in play as well.
Yeah.
That, you can stop Jite with Symbiote, but not if they're going to disguise. Then then the structure goes down basically. All right. So yeah, Ellesmere in the finals. I heard somebody unfortunately had to mulligan to 4 in game 3. Did you hear about that story?
Yeah, Olerade told me about it. He was like super excited because the guy who won is actually a friend of him. And so in the first game, Lento I think is his name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Magnus is his first name, I guess I can say that. He lost the first game in the mirror match in the finals. In the second game, and now imagine you're in the Mocs finals, which qualifies you for the Pro Tour and for the Magic Online World Championship, and guarantees you at least $4,000 plus. The winner of the
it's
Online World
insane
Championship
stakes. Like,
gets $25,000, so it's more than half as much as the Pro Tour. So it's a really big tournament, and you're down 1-0 in the finals, and then you're mulliganing to 4. You're mulliganing to 6, to 5, to 4, and you still don't have a land. You're down 1-0, and you decide to keep a non-lander in the finals against Elves. So you just awkwardly pass the turn. And yeah, so his big upside was that his opponent apparently kept a very slow hand, like one of the grindy hands that, I mean, as much as grindy goes in the Elves mirror, he just hopes to draw some gas and didn't get there. So Magnus, he draws a land on his second turn, plays an Elf. On his third turn, he draws a Gaia's Cradle and completely explodes and kills the guy on the third turn.
wow.
So
4-card no-lander into a turn 3 kill. That's pretty sick.
maybe turn 3 or turn 4. I'm not sure,
Yeah,
but the
okay.
game's pretty much over after that. Yeah.
Sounds pretty good. All right. So sounds like a pretty epic finals right there.
Yeah, and then he went on to win the third game, and well, congratulations again. He's a really nice guy.
Do they still do those Mocs recaps with Rashad Miller voiceover, or did they stop doing that? It would be fun to see this particular game with him commenting. All right. So yeah, other than this Elves final, we had also 5 Miracle decks in top 16, which kind of reiterates what we talked about last week. There is a lot of miracles. Only one of them managed to make top 8, but 5 in top 16 definitely shows that it's still a strong force.
To Elves.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Elves vs. Miracles is a pretty interesting matchup, but we'll get more to that later. Then there was a pretty interesting deck in the Mocs that I wanted to talk about, which is the Mono Red Sneak Attack deck. It came in 19th place. Now, Mark, you said this deck has been around for quite a while, and it was also played in paper at your local store.
Yeah, it has definitely been around for a while. I don't remember. It has some weird name too, but it's the mono red chalice and blood moons and trinispheres, and then the big guys finishes with sneak attack and through the breach. That has existed for a while, and I think that it's just basically a worse version of Sneak and Show, but it's definitely more explosive. The problem is just that you're not playing a lot of cantrips, so you're playing a super explosive deck, but you are you have much weaker mulligans, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, essentially you only have 8 enablers, which are Through the Breach and Sneak Attack. Although this deck also has Pyromancy, which is a pretty interesting card. I'll bring it up on the screen. Pyromancy is a 4 mana enchantment, and for 3 mana you can discard a card at random, and you will deal potentially a lot of damage to your opponent, potentially even 15 damage if you just so happen to discard an Emrakul to that activated ability. I mean, that's a pretty cool way to win games. I don't know how competitive it is, but it looks awesome on paper, just, to be able to do that. And Julian, you mentioned that Tom Ross actually wanted to play this deck in the Invitational.
Yeah, I heard that he was looking for some Sandstone Needles to actually play the deck in Invitational. He didn't get it, and so he ended up playing Infect, which worked out quite well for him, but apparently he was pretty convinced of this deck. I mean, in essence, this is like some version of like Dragon Stompy. You were probably gonna collect half your wins by just going first turn Blood Moon, and for the other wins you're just accelerating into something broken. And as Mark mentioned, like the main problem is consistency.
Yeah, but that's kind of something that's attached to pretty much every Ancient Tomb deck. That's not show and tell. Like, you just hope to get a good hand, and if you get a good hand, you're actually a very good deck. And if you don't, well, you mulligan to 5 and lose. I mean, that's also going to happen.
So I guess the guy who played that likes gambling.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I just recognized his name. He recently won 80,000 euros on a German television game show.
What? Not bad, not bad. So maybe he reinvested some of the money into some sneak attacks, looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely one of those decks where if you run well, then everything can happen, You could even turn 1 sneak attack if you really felt so desired. But yeah, so the question I have about this deck, like you mentioned Blood Moon. Blood Moon is probably the key card in the deck here that gives the most free wins. And if you're going to play a Blood Moon deck, you essentially have 2 options, which are this deck or Imperial Painter. Which of those 2 decks do you guys think is better in the current metagame?
That's tough. I would probably say the Mono Red Sneak Attack deck because it's just more powerful and more proactive. And the Painter deck is more trying to disrupt the opponent. And if the opponent is something like Goblins, for example, then you have to find your combo very quickly because most of your cards does nothing against you. And if they're playing Death and Taxes, then again, most of the cards does nothing against them. But the Mono Red Sneak Attack, if the Blood Moons doesn't do anything, then hopefully you can just blow them out with the combo. And of course, that is two similar strategies in some respects, but the other one is more weak to the Painter deck is more weak to removal, which is more commonly played.
All right,
yeah. Both, I would say.
That makes sense. Like, playing like 6 Red Elemental Blast main deck is a huge hit or miss. Like, either it's going to be amazing or it's not going to do anything. So maybe this deck is better against a more wide variety of decks. But I don't know. If you like Sneak Attack, try this deck out. Maybe it's really good. We don't know. Okay, so moving on. There is also a Legacy Open, Star City Games, in St. Louis. Let's see. I have the metagame somewhere. There it is. Alright, so again, in the same week, another Elves deck taking the trophy here. This was quite an unusual list, wasn't it, Julian?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So, you want to point it out?
Yeah, so the first thing to note is that there's 4 Gitaxian probes in the main deck. So it's like effectively it makes you play with 56 cards. But does this mean that some of the like essential pieces are now absent from the deck? Like what did he cut for that other than Legacy All-Star Rent Packmaster?
If you ask me about the texting probe in Elves, I've seen it before. Like everybody's favorite troll, Erka Maria Musleitner, had been running it on Magic Online, and he kind of, well, doesn't matter that he flamed me for not running probe. I think the general problem about probe is that it actually increases your variance, and that's not as much of a problem in combo decks, because in a combo deck, most combo decks are built as a critical mass deck. So if you miss a land drop, or even your first land drop, you can still just get there on the second turn. In Elves, the mana is already super tight, and missing your first land drop, sometimes even missing your second land drop, is pretty big. So you will sometimes have to keep hands that don't have a land, but a probe. But obviously, you can't really keep those, so you mulligan them. So even though a card that makes you play effectively 56 cards in your deck, if you don't care for the life loss, actually increases your variance, because it increases mulligans. I mean, there's some value to knowing your opponent's hand, and I would definitely love to know about my opponent's hands, and I would definitely also like pay two life for that. But my main problem about probe is having it in the opening hand. So I talked to some people, and I could actually see if people really wanted it playing like 2 copies or whatever. I still don't like it, but I really feel like 4 is way overshooting it, and it will probably hurt you in the long run, because Elves has a really, really good long game, and you really don't want to destroy that long game by increasing your variance in the very first turns and like making you more prone to mulligans.
Yeah, and there's not even like a tropical island or something to maybe help with actually casting it in case you have to. I mean, there's Death Ratch.
I guess that's the least of my concerns.
Sure. Yeah, because actually one of the elf decks in the Mocs had a tropical island for Swan Song in the sideboard, which is another pretty wild technology piece. I mean, is that just to counter Terminus, or?
No, Swan Song has been around for almost a year now. I think the first time even someone tried it, or at least it got some spotlight, was when I was playing it in German Magic 1 in Hanau last year in December. I wrote about it and people liked it, and I mean, it has its perks. It's good against, as you say, Terminus, even though there's still a problem of losing it to counterbalance. It's also okay against combo. I mean, we probably don't want to get too into deep.
No, sure.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The 2/2 really matters. I mean, it's a technology that's around and people play it, and I see myself trying it out once in a while again, and never really liking it these days. But it's somewhat accepted technology in Elves. I mean, playing the Tropical Island in the sideboard, as you mentioned, that's really odd, because you really don't have that many sideboard slots. But the card itself, Swan Song, it's something that actually exists in Elves.
Alright, well then the other interesting thing to note about this deck is the 4 Blood Moons in the sideboard. Mark, what is your initial reaction to that?
That is pretty wild. I mean, Elves can get screwed over by Blood Moon sometimes. I think it's probably a little worse than Miracles playing Blood Moon. I also think that's very bad. But it's certainly unexpected, so there's a huge plus in that regard to running it.
Yeah, the surprise factor with a card like that is definitely something to keep in mind. Sorry. But other than that, like, mostly Blood Moon I feel is against Bug decks, because Bug is like pretty much the only deck that just loses on the spot with that card, unless you can float black-green and then play an Abrupt Decay with the floating mana. But you're not going to keep those manas available against a deck like Elves, so you're probably going to lose to Blood Moon if you're playing Bug. But yeah, like is that a bad matchup that needs a sideboard card like Blood Moon to turn it around, or?
No, like the two decks that would fall to it, as you mentioned, Bug and Chunt, are by no means bad matchups. They are both favorable for Elves, unless they have some crazy technology that involves 4 curse totem or whatever, like talking about an average list.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can definitely see getting some free wins, because obviously he really wants it in his opening hand, so he's playing 4, so it's not like some tool that he has available. No, it's his game plan, apparently, against certain decks. Which also shows in his choice of elves. He's playing 2 Llanowar elves. Most people only play 1 or none at all. He cut down to 2 Heritage Druids. So he really wants to resolve a turn to Blood Moon, or at least cast a turn to Blood Moon against those decks.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan, because as I mentioned, the matchups where the Blood Moons are at their best are already favorable matchups, and the sideboard slots are really tight in elves. So I guess the biggest point about Blood Moon is this price factor. As with most sideboard cards that people don't really encounter, like there's this thing in your head. Elves on a strategical level is not gonna mess with my lands unless I'm playing islands.
Yeah.
So, and you wouldn't really sideboard choke against Bug, because it's not worth the tempo loss if they have a prop decay or still an active Deathlight Chairman, or even Grig's Golgari Charm. So most people in their head, they're like, I can fetch for non-basics as much as I want, and suddenly they use the first fetch land for a non-basic, and then Elves plays turn to Blood Moon, and the game is over. So the surprise factor will definitely catch some games. But, I mean, you guys know me. I really like playing the long game with Elves, and I really feel confident in grinding out most matches. So, I mean, it's a nice gimmick, but at least for me, I guess it's not made for me.
You're a true grinder. No 1-card combo for you, I guess. But yeah, I mean, if I play Miracles against Elves, I'm just fetching 2 dry return. You know, I'm not particularly afraid. But now that this is a thing, I need to, need to watch out a bit more about maybe fetching some basics every now and then.
Yeah, I guess this guy Steve is somewhat helping out the entire Elves community, because now people might actually be like, would he really have Blood Moon? So they lose some minor value in fetching for non-basics. Maybe. So
yeah, maybe. Yeah, no,
by
that
him playing
makes
those,
sense.
the deck already got better, even though you're not playing it.
Yeah, it's all about the mind games, you know. All right. So let's see. Yeah, so let's talk about the other decks in the top 8 here. We had 2 Death and Tax. Actually, this is top 16. So at the Invitational, Death and Taxes didn't do particularly well, but now we actually saw it show up a lot stronger, with 2 copies in the top 16, and one of them was in the finals as well. So yeah, like, is Death and Taxes still good when Elves is winning all the tournaments? What do you think, Mark?
When Miracles is winning all the tournaments, it's good. But this meta was okay for Death and Taxes, but there was not a lot of Elves, but there was some Elves. If Elves is winning everything, then Death and Taxes is obviously very bad. But this top 16 looks very good for Death and Taxes, actually. So I guess it was just some good players picking a deck that was good for the tournament.
Yeah, because Show and Tell is something you like to play against. Bug is okay. Miracles is good. I guess the only bad matchups there are Elves and Storm, from what I can see.
Yes, yeah, that's the only really bad matchups. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess Blue-Eyed Red Delver is not your favorite either.
Blue-Eyed Red Delver is also a really bad matchup, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, I feel like Death and Taxes is still a very good deck, but it's got like the swings in the matchups are pretty big. Like either you're crushing or you can't really do much. I feel like is that just the way the matchups play out, or is that maybe just
in the mirror?
No, just like your matchups. Like either you're crushing somebody by locking them out with all your cute little 1/1s or whatever, or you're just sitting there like, man, this is nature. Okay, well, whatever.
Well, like Shadow's Bug is a close matchup, and Miracles can sometimes be close, but it's still definitely favored for Death and Taxes. But You have some lopsided matchups, definitely some very lopsided matchups, and you also have nutty draws with executing the mana denial plan very, very strongly. But I would say that Dun Texas is kind of, it's like slightly favored in a lot of matchups, and it then has a few really bad matchups. That would be my assessment of Dun Texas.
That makes sense. All right, so let's move on here. So we've seen Elves win 2 tournaments in the same week, the Legacy Mocs and the SCG Open. So that brings us to the question: how do we beat Elves? Because that's going to be pretty important in the metagame now.
Yeah, hopefully someone finds a way. That would be good for me, for Dozen Texas. Well, there's obviously a lot of dedicated hate you can run. I haven't seen any pairs run lately. Like a year ago, people were running pairs, not anymore. And Engineered Plague is not very popular anymore, but it might see increase in play now. But we have stuff like Golgari Charm and even Knights of Soul's Betrayal now getting run a lot. So hopefully, or I don't know if I should say hopefully, but in reaction to the Elf having strong showings, we might see an increase in those cards getting played.
Yeah.
They are already, because of Tuning Nemesis, they started seeing more play. Yeah, so it's just, if you want to beat Elves, sorry, then you have to run some dedicated tribal hate or Elves hate.
Alright, and are there any cards like that are maybe not just for Elves, but also useful in other matchups? Because like something like Engineered Plague is, I guess it's also useful against Death and Taxes, maybe? Or...
It's definitely useful against Death and Taxes. It takes out Thalia and Wild Runes if you name Human, and Mangara even, and shrink some guys. And it's also useful against Goblins, I guess, but that's not super relevant. And
it's also good against Allurin if you name Harpy. I did that at GP Strasbourg.
Yeah, I've needled my fair share of Harpies as well. You gotta do what you gotta do.
It's Beast? I think it's a Beast. Yeah, whatever.
It is a Beast, yeah.
And alright. It takes out M to the Warrens too, so that's a plus.
Yeah, the same thing goes for the Golgari Charm, of course, but I think people are already playing Golgari Charm, and it's not really...
Yeah, definitely.
Like, so Julian, when you play Elves, what do you not want to face in a match if you can choose?
Turn 1 Delver.
Turn 1 Delver, okay.
Every Kate card you can have multiplies in value by a lot if you have turn 1 Delver. So, I mean, that's not really an option for most decks. I'm just mentioning it because it's really, really annoying. It puts a clock on you that you have a hard time fighting outside of Abrupt Decay. But for dedicated slots, I would even say that the stuff like Engineered Plague isn't all that annoying. I mean, yeah, it definitely is annoying, but I think there are better options. And one of them, obviously, is Abrupt Decay. Grafdigger's Cage. Like, I really hate that card. It even goes so far that I often just sideboard out natural orders. Sometimes I even sideboard out all natural orders and an additional Senate. It also prevents fetching Dryad Arbor, so there's a lot of value in that card. It still doesn't stop the grindy plan.
No, it does die to Abrupt Decay, but it only costs you 1 mana, so it's like a really small investment for something with a pretty huge impact.
A lot of other decks.
Yeah, like Dredge and Reanimator come to mind immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cage is definitely a sweet one. But yeah, like you mentioned, when you say turn 1 Delver, what that means is you not only need to be stopping the Elves deck from going broken, but you also need to kill them before they can recover. And whether that is with like Entreat the Angels, or maybe a Flicker Wisp equipped with a Umazawa Jite, or a Delver, like it needs to be something. You can't just bring in a bunch of answer cards and hope to just sit there and hope they don't do anything. That's not a realistic option, I feel like.
Yeah, I also feel like if you want to improve your Elves matchup, you just have to learn how the deck works. I mean, when I play in paper, sometimes my opponent gives me the comment, like, very nice, in a friendly way, I didn't expect you to be that fast. Like, you play turn 1 Lanovives, and then your opponent feels confident in tapping out because, come on, it's just Lanovives.
Yeah.
And even though, like, all the good players, they know about it. But if you feel that you still have some room of improvement, improving your Elves matchup by just learning how the deck works, that the Symbiote and the Quirion Ranger work twice per turn cycle and all that kind of stuff. Just get into practice. Watch a stream, play yourself, I don't know, watch Star City games, whatever. Just get to know the deck, and that's the very first step to actually increasing your matchup. Then you can decide, then you can actually make an educated decision of how to fix the matchup. Do I attack the natural order plan? Do I attack the Glimpse of Nature plan? How big is the grindy plan? Can I stop that? And these are the things that you need to understand first before, yeah.
Alright, but then the huge risk is that Elves is going to be so good that you're going to keep playing it. How do you go back to other decks after you've tried Elves?
Well, I've pretty much tried everything for quite a while, and I've been playing the Elves since May last year, I guess. I don't know if the occasion presents itself. I never had as much fun playing a single deck as Elves. So I'm staying with it for now, unless something really happens.
Right. And Mark, you also played Elves on your stream. Do you feel like that improved the way that you can play against the deck now, or did it help you understand the Elves deck better?
Yes, definitely. Like, I had played against Elves sometimes before, and I obviously knew some of the interactions. Like, if there's a wirewood on the board, you have to source that before you go for any of the Elves and simple stuff like that. But like knowing when you're able to go off and how important your turn 1 mana guy is and stuff like that, that's like evaluating what is important to the Elves player at different times has made me better against the deck, and that should be true for anyone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I personally have yet to play Elves, but something I did do when I was losing a lot to Rug Delver with my Stoneforge control decks. So what I did was just, in my local play group, we just play tested every Monday, and I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna proxy Rug Delver, and I'm gonna play it against you guys every week. And by doing that, I actually figured out the strengths and weaknesses of the deck, and then you can use that when you play against it. Like, oh, I need to waste on them on their upkeep because they might have Stifle. Oh, I need to fetch in response to their fetch because of Stifle. Things like that, and then you figure out, hey, Rug Delver only has 12 creatures, or only 8 creatures sometimes. Maybe I should just be countering all the creatures, and then they can't do anything. It's like those insights can sometimes come from just playing the deck yourself, and like you said, Julian, for Elves, I feel like that could be also a very good idea. Just play the deck and see what it does. Because it's not like when you face it, it always seems so good, but maybe when you play it yourself, you're like, wait, maybe there are some weaknesses here that I wasn't aware of from the other side,
Also,
Anyway.
the mana base is really fragile. If you can kill one of the early Elves and have some kind of mana disruption, it's really annoying. I've always been saying the worst monocolored mana base in Legacy has always been Murfolk, but with Murfolk dropping Wasteland as of recently, Elves is not really monocolored, but if you look at it, it's pretty much monocolored. So I would actually say that Elves has by far the worst monocolored mana base now these days.
Yeah, you're essentially splashing 2 colors. Mark, you play Death in Texas with a lot of land hate. Do you sometimes beat Elves by just denying them all the mana?
A combination of that and jitter, of course. It has to be you have to have a couple of swords usually for the mana guys, and then maybe a wasteland while you fetch up jitter and then get it going. But yeah, it's definitely all the times you beat Elves with Death in Texas, it's because either they have a super weak draw or your Mana Denial plan somehow comes together against the Mana Dog deck.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alright.
Yeah, evasive creatures with equipment. If you have early disruption, as in Blue-White Red Diver, and evasive creatures that carry chitter, that's really good for you. So that you really have to construct your strategy. You can't just throw in random cards. Like, for example, if you're playing a deck that's very weak in the late game, playing Engineered Plague against Elves, is okay if you're gonna wait to close the game fast, because Elves will eventually overcome Engineer Plague. And then you're there in the late game, and yeah, your Plague doesn't really matter all that much. So you really have to account for what your deck is doing, and then choosing the appropriate sideboard cards.
Alright, that makes sense. Now let's move on to something else here. Yeah, we really like doing this stream here, but we also like to hear from you guys about what you want to hear us talk about. So I made a straw poll here, which I will now link in the chat. If you're watching the VOD, the link to this poll will be under the video. Hopefully my future self will remember to do that. Here you go. You can choose multiple options here. Yeah, we want to, cater the show to what you guys want to hear. So we'll definitely keep your opinions in mind for the future. So thank you in advance for everybody that will respond to this poll. Alright, then we're going to talk about something else. Yeah, if you've been watching Mark's stream this week, you may have seen the Lands deck in action. Mark, tell us about this deck that you've been picking up this week.
Alright, so I really missed playing lands, so I want to play some lands, and I contacted my friend Felix and asked him if I could borrow his land deck, and then he asked me what build, and I told him that I wanted a build that was strong against Miracles and Burn, because those are prevalent on mine. And so he gave me a list, and I played it in 4 dailies that day, actually. Played all 4 dailies, and came out with a record of 14-2 with the deck. I played against Miracles 5 times, went 4-1 against that, and lost to bad play against Bugdiller, but had a real strong showing with the deck and really liked it. And I did comment on last episode that I think that Lands was the underplayed deck in Legacy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I showed that Lands can definitely be very strong.
Yeah, you did really well in the dailies you played. I was pretty impressed by the way the deck operates. Like, do you feel the deck is hard to play if you're not used to playing lands?
I think the deck is one of the hardest decks to play in Legacy, definitely. You have a ton of tutors and a ton of different lines all the time. And Intuition is very, very tough to play with, and so is Crop Rotation. And there's just so many lines all the time. And it's also a deck that operates very differently from other decks. And you have to really be aware of that when you keep hands, because even though you're playing lands, a hand with 7 lands is not usually going to do it. And you have to evaluate, like you have to look for accelerants in your opener and stuff to do as well.
Alright, somebody asked in the chat, how did the smokestacks work out in the lands deck?
Smokestack was fantastic. All the time I could resolve that. I think I won every single game where that was solved. And it's just a nail in the coffin often, or when you're behind against Miracles, it can take over the game as well. You have the Loam engine to keep up with permanence, and you even have the times I had Worms Harvest going with Smokestack. I just keep taking Smokestack up and up until they have.
Okay, sacrifice 7 permanents.
And
Easy.
I just sacrifice a bunch of worms each turn.
Man, Worm Harvest is pretty brutal against Miracles, for example. Like, oh,
Yes.
make 6 guys. Terminus, make 7 guys. Terminus, make 8 guys. Got any more?
Yeah, and I think also in regards to that the deck is hard to play, I think I showed that in the second daily, because after the first daily, which I fought, I was completely exhausted, and then I played terrible in the next daily, which I probably should have fought, but ended up 3-1 still because of the strength of the deck, I guess.
Yeah, I saw some of those games, but like, I mean, it's tough to play, but yeah, they're like Talaria West also is like basically a tutor for like, it's basically a demonic tutor, and you have so many different cards in your deck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Lands is especially well positioned because people are not playing a lot of Graveyard Hate right now.
No, absolutely not.
If we talk to our Miracle friends, most of them mention, yeah, what do you play in the sideboard? Yes, I've got a single Surgical Extraction. What do you have? Well, I have a single Rest in Peace. Okay, high five.
Yeah. They have really been skimping on the Graveyard Hate lately.
I have actually moved down to 0 graveyard hate cards in my miracles list because there are just no decks being played. Like there's like maybe a couple of reanimator decks. Like almost nobody plays dredge anymore. And then like who the hell plays lands, right? Like I guess you do now. But it's yeah. But I think yeah. So if lands would actually become a popular deck, that would of course mean that we might see more Blood Moons, more back to basics, more, I don't know, Graveyard Hate. How good is Graveyard Hate against the Lance deck?
It is definitely very, very good, because the Loam engine is really what makes the deck super powerful. But lately, after the Legends rule change, you can now get around Graveyard Hate with the Thespian Stage Dark Depths interaction, and that can, I mean, if your opponent keeps a hand with Graveyard Hate expecting to stall the game like that, you can punish them with like a turn 3 20/20 and then seal the game like that and go around any Graveyard Hate. But it's still very, very strong against it.
Yeah, I can see that. But a card like Blood Moon, like you even have Mocs Diamonds to potentially get around that. So I feel like actually the hate is beatable when you play lands. Do you feel the same?
Yes, I faced Blood Moons a couple of times during the how many rounds did I play? 16 rounds, and I beat Blood Moon 50% of the time. It resolved 4 times against me, and I won 2 of those. And one of them I didn't even eradicate the Blood Moon. I just played Worm's Harvest, and because I had enough Mox Diamonds and Forest, and the other time I decayed it and then kept playing. But it's still super strong.
Alright, so...
That must feel pretty stupid. Like, yeah, I got the Blood Moon. Fuck, where are all these bombs coming from? No, no!
No.
Are you still playing Cephalid Coliseum?
If I'm playing Cephalid Coliseum, I am not playing Cephalid Coliseum.
Okay, because
strong draw engine with Loam, but it's when you have Tranquil Thicket to draw, and you have Tolero West just to find all the bullets and all the useful lands. So Cephalid Coliseum does not really seem worth it.
I'm just mentioning it because I used to play lands like 4 years ago, and I was playing it heavily. And I used Cephalid Coliseum to mess up somebody's Doomsday pile because the guy absolutely didn't know that it targets any player. So,
wow.
Cool.
That's pretty sick. Alright, so how is the lands versus elves matchup? I imagine the Tabernacle is pretty much what it's all about, but... Like
yeah. It's about the Tabernacle. You have to get Tabernacle into play as quickly as possible, and if you don't do that, you're just getting overrun. You have Punishing Fire. In my build, you have Punishing Fire and Wastelands and Engineered Explosives and Chalice to hold the elves back.
Right.
But you really need the Tabernacle to deal with the huge flood of elves that comes out, and then you need to Wasteland the Cradles, and you need to do a bunch of things to control the elves game. And if you don't accomplish that, you're just getting run over. I think the matchup is pretty close, but I was 3-0 on the day against Elves, but...
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, they have a lot of creatures, so Maze of It's not going to do much, so...
No.
I guess it comes down to board control with Punishing Fire and Tabernacle, and then...
Well, yeah, exactly. Once they establish that, there's probably not a lot of actually breaking out from that lock. People think that Tabernacle isn't very good against elves, but most decks that play Tabernacle also have Wastelands, and suddenly you have to tap all your elves for mana, so in a sense, it's like a cursed totem that even taps your guys, so you really have to find a way around that, and that's usually chaining Cradles into Natural Order, and even that is problematic because they still have Glacial Chasm, and you have ways around Glacial Chasm, and I've done it several times that you just glimpse and activate Death Shaman 10 times. End of turn, you discard like your 4 Sonnets, and you already cast all your glimpses and Natural Orders and whatever, but that's very mana intensive. And if they get Cradle going, if they have waste your Cradle and get Tabernacle going, you're behind several turns because it really takes you a lot of time to recover. And that gives them a lot of time to set up Punishing Fire or the Dark Depth combo or whatever. So
yeah, not to mention they can also Tolaria West or Engineered Explosives to maybe blow up potentially all the elves that are in play.
I mean, if you get a big board presence on turn 2, And then they have Tabernacle. Yeah, fine. You pay with Cradle, and then you play another Cradle, and then you Natural Order, and it's good. But in the long game, it's really hard, especially in the mid game. The mid game is really hard when they are there, and you don't really have the means to cast all your tools or haven't drawn them yet. I feel the matchup is pretty. I haven't played it a lot, but in my mind, it feels like 50-50. Maybe slightly favored for Elves, but I don't know. I'm really not sure.
Alright, and is Progenesis a card that's relevant in this matchup? As like a single threat that goes through the maze, or?
Yeah, I
would
would
probably
think so.
put it in, yeah.
I don't think it's realistic to beat Progenesis in with lands if it comes down like pretty early.
Anyway, it would be Tabernacle plus like Ghost Quarter, your basic forest plus. Yeah, that's pretty hard to beat. But yeah, they must first get to that stage. But yeah.
There was a bunch of times where my opponent natural ordered where I was really afraid of Progenesis, but then they got stuff like Scavenging Ooze or Rurik Thar, which I could.
Rurik Thar isn't even good.
No, actually, what happened? He natural ordered for Rurik Thar, and then I played Glacial Chasm, and then you take no damage from the trigger, and then I just started loaming again, and then and then eventually he sacrifices Rurik Thar to a natural order because he couldn't play his Greens on Zenith.
Nice card.
Nice card. Run into my Maze of Ith. Or injure your Glacial Chasm, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, that's lands. I mean, if you like dredging life from the loam and making it so your opponent can't play anything, then maybe this is the deck for you. Unfortunately, I don't have Mark's deck list ready to go.
I think somebody posted it in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
great, yeah.
It's on Twitter too.
Thank you.
That's
It's also in the land thread on the source.
okay. Well, you guys can find it then. So
Playing
let's
two lands
move
of
on
darkness.
to Elves are pretty strong green creatures, but Goblins are in fact also green creatures that are still a deck. Mark, I believe they are still a deck.
Yeah, I did okay with Goblins this week. I guess I fought the first daily, but then I 1-2'd and got reimbursed, and then I think I 1-2'd again. I got reimbursed because I couldn't sideboard, and I don't know. Goblins doesn't seem super strong to me. It has some merit because it's so good against miracles, and there's a lot of miracles right now. But a lot of other matchups it comes short because Stoneforge is just such a beating against the deck.
Yeah, like the Miracles matchup is kind of a joke. Like it's almost impossible to lose, but that's kind of like the only free win that you really get with the deck.
Yeah. Turn 1 Lackey just isn't as good anymore.
No.
Especially with Deathrite Shaman in the format, I guess.
Deathrite Shaman is pretty rough. Like you do have Starfires, but you have to draw it, and yeah. I mean, I think Bug is actually not that bad for Goblins, just because you can make a lot of card advantage and you can probably overpower them.
Yeah,
but but if your opponent has Stoneforge Mystic in their deck, then it's probably going to be pretty rough to do anything.
You can always play the guy, what's the name? That is Battalion, and if it attacks, creature tokens can't block, so the charm token of...
Legion Loyalist.
Legion Loyalist, so that skull can't really block unless it's equipped to another creature.
Yeah, you can play that, but that'd be super bad.
Yeah, I know, but people in my area did that, and it was super funny. Or let's say entertaining.
I mean, of course, there's Tuk Scrapper to maybe blow up some equipment.
Yeah.
It's not like you just roll over and die immediately, but it's just... There's just too many things that can go wrong when you play Goblins against a deck with Stoneforge Mystic in it.
Yeah, and you're not... Yeah, and you're also just... You're not super consistent as Goblins. You have to have Vile or Leggy in your hand, and sometimes sometimes Leggy is a break, and sometimes your Vile gets Abrupt Decayed, and you don't have a ton of game before like turn 4 or 5 some of the time.
Yeah, sometimes.
And sometimes your ringleaders break also.
Sure, and sometimes you just go land, 1/1, search for a goblin. Like that's not particularly. Turn 3 Matron is not particularly impressive in Legacy.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I think like I used Goblins was actually my second Legacy deck on Magic Online. I started with Storm, and eventually I got bored of Storm, so I was like, alright, I want to beat down So I made this Goblins deck that had Mocs in it and 4 Warren Instigators to like potentially erase Storm, because Storm was everywhere on Mono, so you had to have a plan. So if you have
Oh, that
turn
was
1...
you?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh my
probably.
god! Sorry for interrupting you, but
No, it's fine.
when I got into Magic, that was Magic Online, right?
Yeah, for sure.
When I got into Magic Online, I was playing a lot of Storm, and there was this one guy playing Goblins, and he had like, I felt like 15 cards in the sideboard against Storm, and I always won game 1, and lost game 2 and 3 against that guy. That could very well have been you, because it was, for the love of my life, I could not beat that guy.
Yeah, that was probably me. I had
Yeah.
four Mind Fake traps and like Leyline
Yeah.
of the Voids.
Chemotherapies and that. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and the plan was to just turn 1 Warren Instigator, and then turn 1 Instigator would actually kill on turn 3, actually, pretty much every time, if you had anything in your hand at all. So that you could actually erase the combo decks with that. But it was very bad against more grindy creature decks, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, Goblins still may be viable if there's a lot of miracles, but not something you would recommend if you want to do well, Mark?
Well, maybe a different build would be better. I've seen on the source that some people are, and that's not really new tech, but experimenting with Pendelhaven, some number of Pendelhavens in the deck to force through Lackey, and yeah, just very different builds, and I have not devoted the time to test those, but a traditional Goblins build, if there's enough miracles and you run into enough, then it's obviously a decent choice. But
still very weak to Elves.
Yeah, I would not recommend it if you want to do really well in the online meta, at least.
Right, yeah, Elves is pretty problematic. Burn is actually also not great, because
Burn is not great.
Like, they can kill your Lackey and then they can just race you after that. It's kind
and they have Price of Progress, which is very good against you.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Surprisingly good against all the monocolored decks.
Yeah.
It's also quite good against Elves.
Yeah, even if you don't splash the Thalia in Goblins, you're still gonna probably splash black then for Cabal Therapy or something. And you're gonna have 4 Caverns and 4 Wastelands, so yeah. Price of Progress, pretty big game, not gonna lie. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, some people asked about cons. Is it cons or cons of Tarkir? There's been some spoilers out on the interwebs. Have you guys seen anything that you think might potentially see play in Legacy?
Yeah,
Mark,
the
you can go
fetches.
first.
The fetches are, yeah, an obvious one there. Like, that will potentially make Legacy a little bit more accessible, especially on Magic Online, because Blue Delta was like, I think it was like 90 tickets at some point.
Yes.
So,
Yes, it was. But as far as new cards goes, seeing plain Legacy, I have not seen anything yet. Some people said the guy that copies non-land permanent, I think.
the clever impersonator.
He is certainly not Legacy player.
Not so clever after all. No. No, the
Was
problem
there a
with
guy on
that...
your stream, Matthias, that recommended this card as definitely playable in Legacy, even calling it good? I remember that.
I mean, it's always a little tricky to evaluate these cards like before they are released. But I feel like a card that relies on your opponent having something good in play to do something is probably not where you want to be. Like,
especially at this mana cost, whereas one of the best cards in Legacy that you could cast instead.
yeah, like why don't you just play your own Jace instead of waiting for them? Like, oh, I hope he's going to play a Jace now, so that I can do something with this card.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a little too
I guess-
cute.
Yeah, I guess for the other cards, there are 2 cards that have been mentioned at times, like by real people, not that random guy on your stream. No offense, we're still
Real
friends.
people.
Some people have mentioned Mantis Rider, the new Lightning Angel. That's I don't know. Maybe you can put it on if that works. It's for for a blue, a red, and a white. It's a 3/3 creature, human monk. It has flying, vigilance, and haste. So, I
Yeah.
personally don't think that this card will see actual play. Maybe some people will try it because they like it. But overall, it's competing at a already pretty high mana cost in Legacy, and it's competing against stuff like Juno Nemesis would be probably the prime example.
Yeah,
Or Vanilla Click.
Vanilla Click. Yeah, that's not happening. Yeah, some people mentioned the Delve draw 3 cards, but
That's the other one.
like pretty much too cute.
No,
Like
I actually meant the Delve destroy target creature.
Oh, right, yeah.
There are so many good removal spells in Legacy, and this one is not active on the very first turns, where it counts the most.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, Dismember comes to mind as a 1-mana removal spell if you really need it, and this is just worse, pretty much. So yeah, I feel like there's not much to talk about yet, other than the fetch lands.
I mean, I already fell in love with one of the fatties. Meandering Tower Shell. Oh my god.
Is that
I told you guys about that. It's
is
the
that
best
the
turtle
turtle,
ever.
the turtle with delayed haste?
Yeah.
It's a 5-drop that kills your opponents, I believe, 9 turns later. I don't know. it's
Many turns later.
yeah. One of you guys mentioned it has anti haste.
Yeah, it has
Yeah,
anti-haste.
anti-haste. Yeah, it's the
It's a
slowest guy.
5/9 green creature for 5 mana. It has Island Walk, and when it attacks, it gets exiled, and on the very next turn, it re-enters the battlefield attacking. So it's basically attacking every other turn, but can't even block in between. And yeah, I don't know. I would be really surprised if this card saw any constructed play. Maybe there's gonna be some totally busted blue control deck or whatever, and you want the meandering tower shell to.
Yeah, I doubt it. But let's stick to legacy here.
Pretty
I
far.
mean, so yeah, there is the adamant negation actually, which is if you guys seen that card, it's 1 blue instant. It's like a spell pierce only for 1. But if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, it's just a hard counter. It's like a negate. But I feel like it's too inconsistent. Like a daze for 1 mana that only counters non-creature spells. It's pretty weak. And then if you have a Tarmogoyf in play, then it's a negate. But you don't really need any help when you already have a Tarmogoyf in play. I feel like so. I don't know. Yeah, let's just move on. I think there's not really much to talk about.
What I like, what they did is they created not really a new mechanic, but for morph, there are some morph creatures that you can unmorph for revealing a card. And if history has told us anything, then not paying mana for something that's actually meant to be paid mana for is something that leads to the most broken of things. And I don't really see these morphs being any good, but the mechanic, maybe there's going to be some spoiler rare, but I doubt it. But maybe, I mean, a man can hope, that involves this mechanic where you reveal a card from your hand instead of paying mana for the unmorph.
Yeah,
I would love to see that, especially for Elves. Like,
but I think they've gotten a little more careful with printing free cards now after some admitted mistakes in the past, which may have been a misstep after all. Like, I don't know. It's like Dismember is also like a really good card. Well, it doesn't see as much legacy play as I would think, but Mental Misstep was definitely a little bit too much there. So I feel like the power level overall is gone downhill a bit lately. Like all the creatures are like ridiculous for standard purposes. Like now there's a 4 mana 5/4 flying with a positive ability, but like for legacy, what we really need is cheap stuff. Like low mana cost stuff is what legacy is all about most of the time. Like unless you're casting Packmasters, of course, then 4 is acceptable sometimes. But, yeah.
I think I've mentioned it to several people. For me, there's a rule in Legacy: if you pay 4 mana, the card must win the game. And that's true for Chase. That's true for Packmaster. I mean, if it resolves and stays around, and pretty much every other 4 mana spell, Sneak Attack, what have you.
Cataclysm, Natural Order. There's some good ones.
That's one of those unwritten rules of the format.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Alright, so then let's take some questions from the chat. Is there anything you guys want us to answer? Now would be the perfect time.
Now the stream delay actually kicks in. How
Yeah,
much is there? Like 30 seconds, 20?
I think it's like 20 seconds at the moment.
Well, I also want to comment that actually that Abrupt Decay has moved the value of more expensive spells in Legacy up. Actually, it's
That's
now
true.
you can more you can better play some more expensive spells because they get around Abrupt Decay, and making your opponent's Abrupt Decay dead is definitely a thing.
I agree with that. It's actually the reason that I play Leyline of Sanctity now, just because it costs 4. It's just an extra dimension.
That
That's
even
like,
reminds me of 2009 and 2010 when Counterbalance first hit Legacy. And it was like back then, Counterbalance was really about locking out your opponents. Like, not like these days where it's just a card advantage spell in its way. People were actually considering playing higher converted mana cost removal spells just to make sure to dodge the counterbalance. Back then, Crows and Grip hadn't yet been printed, and people were like, yeah, okay, Harmonic Sliver, that costs 3 mana. That's better than any of the 2 mana options.
yeah.
Yeah. So now we're at 4 mana against 3 mana.
So Cathal asks, Mark, is lands also viable in paper? Are you not just gonna draw every match because it just takes too long?
That depends on your own ability to play lands. It's gonna take you a long time to get good enough with lands that you can play it at a reasonable speed and even close the really long games. But I think that the printing of, or not the printing of, but the legend rule change makes lands much more viable in paper since you have the quick kill. You can set up your luck and you don't even have to completely ghost quarter lock them or anything like that. You can just set up enough disruption to just make a 20/20 and then bring the game back home in that way. But there's definitely considerations to the clock. And someone asked how many of my wins were timeouts, and out of 14 wins, I timed out my opponent 3 times.
Alright. Not bad, not bad. Alright, somebody asked, is there any possibility that Birthing Pod is gonna be good in Legacy? I've actually played a little bit of Birthing Pod using a Blake and Judge's list, and I mean, I think it's a pretty solid tier 2 strategy. Like, it's a little bit too cute for Legacy's power level. Oh, that was... But like, once you get going and you're playing against a fair deck, you can definitely like grind them out pretty well. But I feel like it's never going to be tier 1. I don't think. Do you guys disagree with, or agree or disagree with that?
No. I mean, I think it's definitely a deck and a strategy that can do well if it gets the right matchups, because it's pretty much a good stuff deck that also operates rather well without pot. But once it gets pot, it dominates all of the fair decks, I would say. But it still suffers from the same problems that decks like Shardless Bug and stuff suffer, because it's not very slow. It's really dependent on getting acceleration. And against all the unfair decks, I think it needs quite a bit of help out of the sideboard, because the Baleful Strix is not that impressive on its own.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, if you don't play against combo, I feel like the deck has game. But to also beat combo and still have a good grinding game plan against the fair decks, that's pretty tough to do, because there's only so many slots, and your deck must be like a minimum amount of creatures, because otherwise the birthing bots don't do enough. So it's tough. Alright, why isn't Infect a thing online? I do think actually it is a thing online.
It's certainly.
Have you guys played against it recently?
Not recently, but over the last few weeks, definitely.
Yeah, I've run into it multiple times in the same dailies. When I played Ley Lines in a daily, I ran into it twice.
That must be
And I
pretty tough.
how on you are when you mention, yeah, you know, the one time I played Ley Lines, and then you just move on. What?
I actually played against Infect in the Mocs, and I had like the best possible draws every game, and I narrowly won. So I think I was actually impressed by how good Infect is. I had like triple Swords to Plowshares plus Force of Will 2 games in a row, and I like barely won. So I don't know. I think Infect is pretty real now that I've seen more of it. So I'm sorry if I missed your question, guys. I'll try to get as many as I can. What is the best combo deck at the moment? I can imagine you're going to say Elves, Julian.
If you want to call it a combo deck. I mean, that game 1, I could very well call it a combo deck. But game 2 and 3, depending on the matchup, I easily win more than 50% of the games without any sort of real combo like Glimpse or Natural Order. I mean, Hardcore Spearmoth, if you want to call that a combo, I don't know. But that's also that's the strength of the combo deck, if you want to call it that the non-combo plan is so incredibly strong, and because the combo plan itself can be pulled off rather easily, people are heavily sideboarding against them, and thus hurting their long game. So if you want to classify Elves as a combo deck, and I guess most people do, and I would probably have to agree with that, I feel overall Elves is the most well-positioned combo deck, if you can say that. Power-wise, probably Sneak and Show or some kind of Storm, but over the entire meta game, and especially because the long game in Elves is so good, I would say Elves.
I agree that Elves is probably the best combo deck right now.
I think it's actually really close with Storm. I think Storm is a better combo deck, but I think that Elves is probably a better deck overall because it's more resilient and it's not all in on the combo necessarily. But I still feel like Storm is like very underplayed and underrated. But yeah, I mean, maybe Elves is just better right now. I feel like just more people play Elves as well. So
I think so too.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, and I think that it's gonna be like people will adapt to it. The way I've been advocating adapting to Miracles, people should also adapt to Elves these days, and then we're gonna see some change. And maybe something has to go. We talked about that in the last podcast, but I think it's not entirely set in stone that the meta must look the way like it does.
We should wait for maybe people to adapt. Yeah, and I mean if people start playing Golgari Charms and Engineered Plagues and stuff, then you probably want to sleeve up some Dark Rituals and just ignore all that. And yeah, it's kind of a shift in the hate that people play. Alright, let's see, what else do we have here? Somebody asked, what is the best Stoneforge Mystic deck in Legacy right now? Do you feel like it's Death in Texas, Mark, or do you think it's pretty close with the other ones?
I don't know. It's Death in Texas is definitely like an equipment deck a lot of the time, and Stoneforge is very, very strong in Death in Texas, but it might just be that a True Name Nemesis Stoneforge Mystic deck is better suited to take advantage of the Stoneforge. But it could also be some Softer Sword deck even.
That's what I was going to say, indeed. Like I'm going to say Top Tier Miracles as the best Stoneforge Mystic deck in the format. Based on my results, like I'm 25-3 with the deck. It's got to be like a pretty big part of that can be attributed to having Top Tier Foundry, and Stoneforge Mystic is just too ridiculous. You know, like it can search up Batterskull, gives you free wins sometimes. You can search up a Riot Gear or Sword of the Meek, whatever you want to call it, and you know, just go infinite, make all the 1/1s. But I think all the Stoneforge Mystic decks are pretty similar in power level.
In a vacuum, not factoring in that there are probably other decks that are better to play, I really like Barnblade, because you've got True Name Nemesis, you have Acceleration, and you have Stoneforge Mystic, and all these three cards play very well together. So even though the deck doesn't really exist right now because most overall Abrupt Decay and Deathwatch Shaman are kind of the same mid-rangey shell and do better, I really feel like a deck like Sam Black played in Grand Prix Washington DC that was pretty much just banned. That's the kind of deck I really love, and is probably one of the best ways to use a Stoneforge. But maybe people should try it again. I don't know. I don't really see it happening, and for good reasons. But maybe I'm wrong, and there are no actual reasons why people are not playing it. So I love Band. I just wanted to mention that.
Sure. The problem that Band has is like pretty much Terminus, because you're a mana creature deck, and that brings the weaknesses with being susceptible to Wrath of Gods, but
And you have no meaningful interaction with counterbalance either.
no.
Right, I guess.
Mark, you've actually played like a slightly different band deck. No Knight of the Reliquaries, but Judges Familiars and Edric's. Do you feel like that deck is still good right now?
Well, actually, Overvoltage has been doing very well with it, and his results, along with the results I put up with the deck, makes me think that it's still a strong deck. But I don't know if I would have to play more with it before I could recommend it to anyone or get a better evaluation of its power level.
All right, that makes sense.
You created a monster and now you don't want to control it.
I don't know. He just wants to sniff all the flavors, you know. He doesn't want to stick to the one monster. Somebody asked what the best of budget deck is. I'm not actually too aware of how expensive the decks are right now.
What does budget mean?
Yeah. First of all, if you're don't have a lot of money, then playing Legacy is probably not where you want to be, because even the cheaper decks are still going to be pretty expensive. But if you play on Magic Online, then this would probably be the time to buy in, because of the recent release of Vintage Masters. Certain cards are still pretty cheap, like Force of Will, Jace the Mind Sculptor, the dual lands.
And the fetch lands coming up.
The fetch lands are getting reprinted. Like, you might want to pick those cards up and see what you can potentially build with that. Don't play Miracles. We already have enough Miracles online. No, just kidding. If you want to win, Miracles is certainly a good choice. But yeah.
So, back to his question, I think there are two decisions. Like, first you have to decide what does budget mean for me, and the other is what's my approach. Do I want to be competitive, or is just having fun and just playing in these tournaments that happen to be there around my city or wherever, just to play in there? I don't really want to be super competitive. Like, these are the two things. Because if you want to be competitive while not spending really not a lot of money, maybe you should play Burn. But if you want to have fun, that's getting old pretty fast, so maybe you should switch to some other kind of deck. I don't know. What would be...
John Nickfit is a decent option if you want to play a cool toolbox deck, and it's not too expensive.
But I guess you can get away with 2 Bayous in that deck, I don't know.
You don't even have to play 2 Bayous, you can just play... in my John Nickfit deck, I play
Explorer.
1 Bio, 1 Badlands, and 1 Tiger as the duels. And those are not too expensive.
But
the deck is actually fun to play.
Yeah, the duels are pretty cheap. I don't think Nickfit is that great of a deck, though. Like, if you want...
That's
if you want like the best...
Yeah, sure. For budget.
Of course. But if you want like the best value for your money, I would probably recommend picking up either Storm or Elves. Those decks are a little over 500 tickets each, and they're both like tier 1
decks. Yeah, talking
decks.
about Magic Online, I guess.
Yeah.
But in general?
Oh yeah, of course. If you're playing in paper, then I honestly don't know how much stuff costs. If you play online, you should go to mtggoldfish.com.
I think MTG Goldfish mentioned that paper Elves costs around $2,000. I'm not sure, but that's definitely not budget. Even if it was just half, like $1,000 would still not be budget to most people, I guess.
No, okay. Well, then I can't really give advice then. I don't really know about the paper prices.
So if people really want to play Legacy, I mean, I can just speak for my community, which is Greater Munich or Southern Germany or even all of Germany. You can always borrow decks. If you're a nice guy and you ask and somebody knows you, or let's say you just show up 2 or 3 times, people will borrow your deck. They will lend your deck. That's really no problem. I mean, there's this feeling of I want to own my own deck, but if you just want to play and you want to have fun with your friends or your soon-to-be friends or whatever, just ask. It really shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alright. Is Agrolome still a deck in Legacy? Agrolome used to be a deck for a long time when I first started playing. What really made it so it's no longer a deck? Do you guys have any insight on that?
Probably Deathlight Shaman and True Name Nemesis was large contributors to its downfall. But the power level is there in Agrolome, and well, I don't think how is it Miracles matchup? It's not super good, I think.
It's like I think it's probably pretty even.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I think I would rather play Agrolome against, at least in the list that Niklas played in the Bazaar of Moxen finals. He even mentioned that he would like to cut some of the discard spells, I guess, or something else for slaughter games. And if you slaughter games and treat the angels against miracles, I feel you are in a very good position with that deck.
right. And then if you then have Punishing Fire, you probably can't lose anymore.
Mhm.
Alright. Yeah, I mean, there's ways to build Agrolome that can beat miracles, but you're still like, I feel like Agrolome has never been truly a very consistent deck.
Yeah, that's the problem with Eglom, and it's also a dog to combo decks.
Absolutely. Like, you can play the version with 4 Chalice main deck, but you need like land, Mox Diamond, and Chalice, and then that's like only good against Storm, maybe. Like, you haven't even won when you play turn 1 Chalice on 1, and then you don't really have anything else.
The big draw towards Agrolome, at least when it first started out in late 2009, 2010, was that it played a lot of really, really powerful cards. But all the non-Mox Diamond based decks and like let's say all the non-combo mid-range decks, they caught up in power level. Like, we've seen so many good mid-rangey cards enter the meta game over the last couple of years that turn to, I don't know, do people still play Countryside Crusher? I guess not. That's just not good enough anymore.
Probably just Knight of the Reliquary, but yeah.
Yeah.
When the deck
but
was
even
like,
Knight, we don't even see Knight. But like,
no, Maverick is nowhere to be found. But like, also when the deck was very good, there was a lot of tribal aggro, like Merfolk aggro, Goblin aggro, and you could just go like Tarmogoyf Knight, Devastating Dreams, kill your board, kill the lands, attack you for 10. Like,
so many of my dreams.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I guess that deck is actually pretty reasonable against Elves then, since it has Chalice on 1 and
I have
Devastating Dreams.
Probably only played once or twice against it. I feel favored game 1, but I really have no idea what happens after boarding.
No. I mean, that's something that you just are going to have to test for yourself if you want to know if the deck is still good. Well, like, proxy it up, go play, and see what he does.
Just do what Niklas did and show up to a random tournament, win it, and then complain about that you couldn't play the modern part of the Bazaar of Moxen. he and his friend David, they just constructed the deck and they played in the Bazaar of Moxen because they were there for modern. And so he randomly happened to win the Legacy event, so he couldn't even play modern at all.
Alright. Yeah. Let's see if there's any other questions. What's the best way to make Stoneblade if you don't have... What kind of duels now? I don't understand the question.
What's the question?
Question by Bordeaux. He says if you don't have ABU duels, is that... Well, Alphabet. Oh yeah, okay. He means he doesn't have like the old dual lands, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you can blue-white. You can build blue-white Stoneblade, definitely. You can build, for example, Back to Basics, blue-white Stoneblade. You can build it with True Name Nemesis and Jace and stuff. But you would definitely need Tundra for that to be optimal. But you could still.
You could play Hallowed Fountain, but yeah, it's.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, thoughts on the state of Enchantress? We haven't seen Enchantress in a very long time. It used to be a thing on Moto for a while.
Yeah.
But it's,
I guess because it was cheap, or it still is.
Yeah, but it's pretty much dead now. Why do you guys think that is?
It's the problem with Enchantress is it takes so much splash damage from other combo decks, and even from. Yeah, also Elves, for example, like Golgari Charm wrecks them too, and it's just pretty much every card is just such a beating against Enchantress. So it will never be like this surprise factor that just gets people. It can never be that because it dies to Elves for Canonist, it dies to Golgari Charm, it dies to Pernicious Steed, it dies to all the cards basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and like even Miracles can remove their go to Enchantress Terminus. And,
Yeah, the Miracles matchup is actually decent.
That should be good, yeah.
yeah,
Or
I mean,
decent. Let's call it decent.
decent. Yeah, I mean, Jace is still extremely strong against Enchantress because they have so many random cards in their deck that don't do anything. So if the Miracles player can counter the Enchantress effect and then play a Jace, it's going to be really hard to beat that.
I remember back then, like some years ago, just hardcasting your win conditions against all these blue-white control decks, as in, yeah, I guess Miracles was already a thing back then. You just hardcast Sigil of the Empty Throne. That's an enchantment that makes all your future enchantments
Into Angels, yeah.
Yeah, like you get an additional angel whenever you cast an enchantment.
Mhm.
So people have been talking about Luminarch's Ascension as a way to break open the Miracles Mirror, and that could definitely be a card that you could play in Enchantress, because it still stays
Yeah.
around after the Terminus. But
makes
overall,
sense.
I don't really like the card. I don't know.
I actually played that in the Mocs. Yeah, I did win one game in the mirror because I had
Oh.
it, but yeah, it's only for one matchup. I mean, I guess Enchantress can be built to beat Miracles, but
For
it
sure.
has too many other problems on the side.
It's also not very good against Elves. And back then, when Enchantress was big, and Enchantress was probably my first competitive deck in Legacy, you had the upside of having so many good matchups, as in Sue or even Merfolk, and all these creature aggro-based decks that don't really exist anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
what's the real aggro deck these days that
Yeah,
doesn't have
I mean,
that doesn't have a prop decay?
I mean, pretty much just Rogue Delver, I guess, is sort of an aggro deck.
And they still have ways around the very few really important spells in Enchantress.
Yeah, and Mode
That's
just
nice.
also just used to be like pretty much a hard lock, but now people have like Delver of Secrets and Entreaty Angels, and like, oh, nice mode you got there, or even like Deathrite Shaman. There's just
And let's not even get started about the combo matchup.
no,
Yeah.
no, of course. That's another big problem. Alright. How about Jund in Legacy? I believe we touched on Jund last week as well. Because that's something a lot of people wonder, like, can I use my modern cards, buy some extra duels, and maybe play Jund in Legacy? Yeah, you can. It's not really tier 1, I feel like, but it's definitely like a deck in the right metagames.
You could upgrade it to this waterfall stack that we've seen a little bit more of recently. The 4-color Cascade deck. But I think that's... Does it play white? No.
No,
I
it's
think it adds blue to Chant, right?
Yes.
yeah, it just adds like Shard's Age and Brainstorm,
Yeah.
like Ancestral Visions. Yeah, I mean, you could, but then you have to buy like Force of Wills. I think the appeal to Jund for people is that they can use their cards for Modern. They already have Tarmogoyf, they already have Dark Confidence, they already have Lilianas. So they just want to buy like a couple dual lands and be good to go. Yeah, you can do that. It's just you're gonna have a lot of trouble with combo decks. That's something you have to be aware of when you decide to play 4-mana 3/2 haste in your deck. So yeah.
I remember somebody posting on Twitter screenshots of him charbelchering random people, and the caption of all these images was, "This happens when people cast Bloodbright Elf in Legacy."
Yeah, it does. Like if they even get to cast it, like most
Yeah,
of the
or
time.
they
like,
intend to cast Bloodbright Elf. Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody
like-
asked about Death's Shadow, and I guess we don't really have a lot to say about that, but I just remembered that at the Bazaar of Mocs in Paris in late 2013 in November, there was a Death's Shadow list pretty high up until late in the day. Maybe you can find a deck list for that if you check the... I don't know how many decks were posted, top 32 of the Bazaar of Mocs in Paris 2013. Maybe you can find a Death's Shadow list from there.
That actually reminds me, I still have this brew that I never really gotten to try out. It's like a Doomsday Death Shadow deck, where like you play like a Death Shadow or a Delver of Secrets, and then you play a Doomsday, losing half your life conveniently, and then the top of your deck is just all Temporal Masteries. So it's like, oh, it's a miracle. I take another turn. All right, attack you with my Death Shadow, and you're just like. You just like miracle 4 Temporal Masters in a row, and then
That
you draw
reminds
like
me of
a Lab Maniac
Vintage
or
Oath.
whatever.
Like Vintage Oath that has the demon that just got Time Walk and then Snapcaster Time
Shadows, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
RuneScarred Oath.
simple.
I
Yeah.
played that on Magic Online. It's pretty fun. It's not very good, but it's very fun. But yeah, I like Death Shadow is another one of those cards. It's never going to be tier 1, but it's if you want to play it, you can play it, and it's not going to be completely terrible. You're just going to be at a disadvantage compared to like Tarmogoyf or whatever. But yeah, you can make it work. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll actually wrap it up here for today. Sorry we didn't get to answer all the questions. We'll definitely answer more questions next week. Yeah, if you guys want to vote in the poll that I linked a couple times already, we'll keep that in mind for the next episodes. We want to do our best to improve the show and really bring you guys the content that you want to see. So yeah, thanks again, Mark and Julian, for being here with me. Thanks to all the viewers for being here, for interacting with us, and yeah, next week, are we going to be on a different day, Mark? Did you? Because the thing is that Mark has a legacy tournament on Wednesdays, so we might be moving to a different day.
Also,
But
we agreed to calling it a legacy tournament. Okay.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not gonna disclose
Come
anything
on.
about your personal life.
No, legacy tournament.
Okay.
Serious business. No, but yeah. So we'll announce the day when we know it, but it's probably going to be on a different day. But there will be another episode next week, of course, because we do want to keep doing this. Yeah. Thanks everybody for watching, and hope to see you next week.
Bye.
All right.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
guys. Yeah, but there was also a lot of stupid questions.
What's the best doomsday pile? No. Oh, no.